pause for a moment and take a close look at this beautiful young Australian. Her name is Celeste Mano. 5 years ago, her future was as joyful as her personality. But then a man she worked with, ever so briefly, became obsessed with her. It was attention Celeste never reciprocated. That didn't stop Luay Seiko, though. For more than a year, he stalked her, making her life miserable. And in November 2020, he broke into her home and murdered the 23-year-old. What happened to Celeste is tragic and harrowing. This is a story we wish we didn't have to report, but it must be told. To feel close to her daughter, Aggie DeMoro always carries this golden heart filled with her ashes. What did you love about her?
There was nothing not to love about Celeste.
She was so beautiful.
Well, I think so. I spent 23 years letting her know how blessed I was. It's almost like I can hear her. She'll say, "Oh, stop, Mum. You're my mum." That's what she'd say when I used to say, "You're so beautiful," because I always told her.
Celeste Manno was 23 when she was killed by a man who had been relentlessly stalking her for more than a year. These are the messages that haunt Aggie, a mum who will never get over the pain of not being able to protect her daughter from the grip of Luay Seiko. Celeste worked in the same company, but only knew Seiko briefly. That didn't stop the 35-year-old from becoming obsessed with her, though. It was attention she never wanted and never reciprocated, but that only fueled his desire.
Never, ever did it occur to me that this beast would be capable of something like this.
This story is hard to watch, but those who loved Celeste feel it's important to reveal the truth. The system failed to protect this young woman who did everything she could to try and stop the man stalking her.
All of it has been shocking and it's just wrong. There is nothing that is about the victim.
The fact that somebody can be taken out of this world so callously is just so unbelievably unfair.
Chris Ridsdale also worked at the same call centre in Melbourne as Celeste. They just started dating, their new relationship full of promise and joy. She chose you. You say you were lucky.
Yes, because time with her was just always amazing. When she was smiling, you could see it from a mile away, and she always just lit up, and her laugh was infectious when she got going.
The events that would lead to an awful tragedy began in June 2019, when Seiko was sacked. As the team leader in the telephone call centre, Celeste had the job of escorting him out of the building. It was probably the most time they had spent together. Did she ever mention Seiko?
Never, except for the day he left.
What did she say about him?
She's coming quite somewhat upset because she goes, "I really felt bad for him, so I just extended my hand to wish him all the best." She goes, "And he plants a kiss on my cheek, Mum. I must have gone tomato red. I was so embarrassed." And I said, "Oh, you're such a drama queen, sweetie. He's probably had a crush on you all along and you haven't even realised.
A few days after being fired, Seiko contacted Celeste on Instagram. It now seems as if this was the moment his infatuation began.
That following Saturday, she goes, Mum, have a guess who's just messaged me? I said, who? She goes, the guy I told you about the other day, the one that left my work. And then from there is how it all started.
His fixation with Celeste quickly grew. One message became many more.
Some of them almost were like poetry. And there's just heaps of these messages. And so I said, oh my God. They're all about how crazy in love he is with her. He can't eat, sleep, he can't function. He can't even look for work.
But no matter what Celeste said, Seiko refused to go away. Celeste tried to block him, but each time he'd return with a new Instagram account. The stalking was becoming relentless.
Sometimes was within a matter of minutes. She blocked an account, closed her phone, reopened it again half an hour later. There was a new message request from a new random username, and it had come from him.
He just wouldn't give up.
Wouldn't at all. It was painful to watch Celeste go through it. The way she stressed over it, the way she lost sleep, the way she felt in every way uncomfortable about the situation. That was the hardest part.
I said to Celeste, look, Celeste, sweetie, this guy knows where you work, okay? We don't know who he is and what he wants. The last thing we need is for him to find out where you live. And she goes, that's crazy. Gosh, Mum, I'm sure he's just going to get bored.
But he didn't. After 6 months, Celeste and Aggie had to do something. They went to the police.
She didn't want to go to the police. This particular message he'd sent, it was no longer one of his love messages. This sounded like an angry message.
What did it say?
He says, I'm going to climb up and show the world that I am somebody. It was just the way it was written. And so I said to her, Celeste, he's clearly not getting bored. He's not going away.
And when you walk into the police station, what do they say to you?
He hasn't committed a crime. There's nothing we can do about it. He looked at Celeste and he said, well, just ignore it. And she goes, I have been ignoring. And then he said, you know, that's social media these days. If you don't like it, get off social media.
Did they take his name? Did they indicate they might talk to him?
I don't even remember him taking notes. Nothing.
Nothing was done to stop Seiko messaging Celeste. And for the next 6 months, it just got worse. Seiko was seen parked outside her work. He started following her and figured out where she lived.
This had gone on for an entire year. So now we have so many more messages, right?
The Instagram messages he was sending also became sexually explicit.
I'm a very visual person. So visualising what he wanted to do to her. And it was in the most vulgar. I've never read something like that.
They were now so worried about Seiko, Aggie and Celeste went back to police. And this time, finally, an officer listened.
He says, have you been to the police before? And I said, yes, actually 6 months ago. Are you telling me something should have been done then? He said, let's just say some of us do our job better than others. It was like this sense of relief. And he says, okay, you need to get an intervention order now.
It was the first time police actually took down Luay Seiko's name. They served him with a personal safety intervention order which was meant to prohibit him from contacting Celeste. But Aggie wasn't convinced. So you walk away.
And we walk away.
And do you feel, finally, we've got some protection?
No. I said to Celeste, this is just a piece of paper, sweetie. Let's remember that.
For a month, the piece of paper worked. But then a 3-page letter popped up on Celeste's Instagram account. It was the stalker back again, this time pleading with her to stop ruining his life.
Please see reason, Celeste. Please. Celeste, the ball is in your court. Only you can end this now, Celeste. Please end this nonsense by withdrawing the order and stopping the charges against me for stalking and harassment. And if you make the right choice, Celeste, both of us can move on and we can finally have peace of mind.
When you read this letter, what goes through your mind?
I said, oh my God. So he's breached the order now. Gosh, I can't believe he breached it.
The police acted and charged Seiko. It was a moment of relief for Aggie and Celeste.
Everything stops. He disappears. And I said, he got scared. Thank God. Hopefully he's learnt his lesson now. We literally thought it was over.
But as you'll see, they were wrong. Seiko's next move was to buy a weapon.
It's a beautiful area here, and we always enjoyed sitting up on the rooftop. Yeah.
Fitzroy in Melbourne's north will always be special to Chris Ridsdale. It was the last place he and his girlfriend, Celeste Mano, went on a date.
I couldn't have asked for a better last day to have with Celeste.
This photo was taken that day. The young couple was all smiles. That beautiful photo. What are you thinking and feeling in that photo?
Just happy. Just in every sense of the word. Celeste was just so adamant that it would be my new profile picture on Instagram, and that she couldn't wait to put it up.
But that one precious photo triggered ex-colleague Luay Seiko. He'd been stalking Celeste for more than a year until police had taken out an intervention order against him. She thought it had scared him off, but Seiko was still lurking in the shadows. What has Seiko done?
He'd figured out not only where she was by following her car, through stalking her through her Instagram photos, to figure out exactly which house was hers, which room within the house was hers as well.
It was November 16, 2020. Celeste and her mum, Aggie DeMoro, were the only ones home. It was bedtime and they were saying goodnight to each other. What was the last thing you said to her before you left?
I walked to the door and said, light on or off? And I think she said, leave it on, I'll put it off in a minute. And I said, all right, love you. She says, love you more.
Just before 4 a.m, armed with a hammer and a large kitchen knife, Seiko smashed through Celeste's bedroom window and violently attacked her. For Aggie, talking about that night is to relive it.
It was like something I'd just never heard. It was like a million pieces of glass just crashing. And all of a sudden I heard, oh. So I remember just going, Celeste, and I just ran out of bed and I'm just screaming her name down the hallway. I go, Celeste, sweetie, what happened? And I realise that I'm running all over glass, I'm seeing blood. I still don't get it, and I'm pulling her out of the bed. She's not helping me at all. But I see all that glass, and so I thought I didn't want to drop her on all that.
Outside, security footage shows Seiko fleeing in his car. As the paramedics arrive, inside, Aggie is desperately fighting to save her daughter's life.
Breathe, sweetie, please don't leave me, don't leave me. And then one of them stops me and he says, this is a crime scene, we found a knife. And in that moment, all I said was, what? "Oh my God, he killed her!" He said, "You know who did this?" I said, "Yeah. Yes. Yes. She's only been stalked by one."
Seiko had stabbed Celeste 23 times. His strike to her heart had killed her.
She was asleep in her bed in our home. And he did this under my watch. That's something I have to live with.
I'll never forget the phone call. That she was gone. That he'd killed her. That stalker. That guy who wouldn't leave her alone. He smashed in the window and he killed her. It's beyond heartbreaking. It kills you to relive that on her behalf and try and understand what she must have gone through.
Celeste didn't stand a chance at the hands of Louis Seiko. But as you'll see, his evil act wasn't over yet. His next move proved just how premeditated his murder plan had been.
When you hear that he drove to the police station straight away and handed himself in,
Who the hell does something like this, leaves the murder weapon behind, drives to a cop station? I said, Jesus Christ, mark my words. He's going to try and get off on mental impairment.
Before Aggie DeMoro's daughter was murdered, she didn't know much about the law.
I had to prepare myself. I had to really prepare myself for what was going to happen next.
But now this broken mum has become an expert in what she says is a seriously flawed justice system.
what gives you the strength to sit here today?
In order to cope with living without Celeste, I needed to understand exactly what was to come. And the more I was learning, the angrier I was becoming. Our legislation in so many areas is just wrong. There is nothing that is about the victim.
Celeste Mano was stalked by her ex-colleague, Louis Seiko. For more than a year, he tormented her before he stabbed the 23-year-old while she slept in her bed in November 2020. Aggie's determined to stop such a senseless crime happening again.
There's no parent, wherever they live, that are going to be fine with the laws the way they are.
Having someone at you constantly and this anticipation that they could turn up anywhere, they could call you anywhere. I mean, the psychological harm of that, it really isn't well understood and well recognised within criminal justice systems.
Psychologist Professor Troy McEwen is an expert in stalking behaviour. She says the first step in understanding the problem is being upfront about it.
Recognise what stalking is and use the word stalking. If you go to the police, say stalking. If you're talking about it with family, use the word stalking. Call this what it is. It's its own behaviour that causes its own kind of damage and it needs its own response.
Celeste's murder prompted Victoria's Law Reform Commission to launch an inquiry in 2021 into the state's stalking laws. Professor McEwen worked on the review, but she's angry that from 45 recommendations, not a single one has been fully adopted.
What disappoints you the most about Celeste Manno's death?
The government's response to the VLRC report. I've had cases that I've worked with where victims have literally had to kind of, change their name, move interstate. Their whole life is upended. It's enormously destructive. We need to do better, fundamentally.
I know that the system failed that family.
Jacqueline Symes is Victoria's Attorney General. She's full of sympathy, but it seems not much action.
Since Celeste's death, can you say that the government has done enough to make it safer for victims?
The police have responded appropriately. They have a new tool which really looks at the risk, escalating behaviour and early intervention.
She's talking about a new assessment tool called SASH. which stands for Screening Assessment for Stalking and Harassment. It's a list of questions officers should ask victims when they first go to police. It's designed to help identify high-risk stalking cases.
Why are we 4 years down the track and that tool, as you put it, is still not rolled out to every police station?
We have the evaluation and the early signs are that it's good. Be having conversations.
Early signs, we're 4 years in.
The pilot is identifying concerning behaviour that can amount to stalking, and so therefore that is a great tool for police.
Do you think 4 years down the track more should have been done?
Celeste shouldn't be dead. I am motivated to make changes to this system. We've started that and will continue to do so. But there are no easy fixes. If there was, we would have done that already.
But that's not what Aggie wanted to hear so long after her daughter's death.
I was made commitments, promises, and silly me, I believed it all. And we know that right now, if Celeste's situation was occurring in the same way, it would happen again.
The case was in and out of court for 3 painstaking years. Seiko finally pleaded guilty to murdering Celeste, but only after failing to convince psychiatrists he was mentally impaired.
He was found to know exactly what he was doing. There was premeditation behind this. He bought the knife the day after we reported the breach.
10 days ago, Celeste's family, Mum Aggie, her dad Tony, and brother Alessandro, finally learnt Louis Seiko's punishment.
When you face this man in court, what does he look like to you?
Facing the demon that took my daughter away from me was the most challenging experience in my life, other than that night.
Seiko didn't show an ounce of emotion before or after he learned his punishment. The judge said to him, Celeste deserved life and you decided otherwise. He was sentenced to at least 30 years in jail.
Today's outcome proves just how flawed the justice system is.
Celeste's parents feel let down once again. They wanted a life sentence, but the reality for them is no amount of time or punishment will ever be enough.
I should have been there for her. I should have protected her. It haunts me. It's going to haunt me to the rest of my life.
What did you want coming here today?
Just justice. Just justice.
Celeste had dreams like any other 23-year-old. She doesn't get a second chance. So I'm supposed to be okay with him getting a second chance if and when he's released from parole. No.
The outcome is also devastating for Celeste's boyfriend, Chris Ridsdale.
The fact that Celeste had to go through it for as long as she did was a crime in itself. And things could have been done so much sooner before they had escalated to the point that they did, that Celeste might have still been sitting here today.
He can put his numbers down on the wall and count his days and count his years.
This is a family who will never come to terms with losing their Celeste.
She was just my world. Just my world.
How much fight have you got left in you?
I'll never stop because I refuse to believe that laws can't change.
Even though the man responsible will be 65 before he has any chance of being freed, Aggie will fight forever for her daughter.
I promised Celeste that I would get her justice one way or another.
If this story has raised issues and you need to speak with someone, there is help available. Call 1-800-RESPECT, which is 1-800-737-732.